Well, I mean, I think at this point, what is really exciting is that sake is enjoyed much even outside of the Japanese sphere, right?
Amazing.
Like a lot of people are pairing sake with everything. That they realize that even though sake is a brewed beverage, it's brewed like beer, it's just like wine. There's so many different styles, so you can enjoy it with different foods.
Hello everyone, this is Ankita and we are live from USA Spirits Rating, and with me we have Michael. Michael is one of our judge at USA Spirits Rating, and we are talking straight on how sake producers can make it big and can successfully enter the US market. And I don't think we have any other person who is better than Michael to talk on this subject. So Michael, before we begin, why don't you introduce our audience to who you are, where you have been working, and how integrated you are with sake as a category?
Sure, yeah. So I lived in Japan for about 8.5 years before I moved to California, and I have been working as a sake buyer. I worked as a sake buyer for Wally's Wine and Spirits in Beverly Hills for about 7 years, and then now I work in sales for Soto Sake.
Amazing, amazing. So I hear that there's a lot of experience that you bring to US market and to US trade, because you originally worked in Japan, and I think that is how culturally you have been integrated with sake category a lot.
Yes.
Tell us more about what sort of difference do you see when you talk about sake in Japan and sake in the US? So is there any perception change that you see? Is there any consumer change or the category change that you see in these two different countries?
Yeah, I mean, one big difference is that in the States, a lot of people's first exposure is hot sake, right? So you see a lot of people drinking hot sake, it's kind of their entry point, that or nigori, right? Unfiltered sake, unfiltered. But hot sake, in Japan is typically enjoyed during the cold months. So a lot of times people tend to drink more hot sake in the winter when it's cold outside or on a chilly night. So I think that a lot of people's entry point to sake in the US is just at a different stage. But yeah, I mean, you do see a lot more people starting with hot sake, but these days, a lot of people are more exposed to Junmai and Junmai Daiginjo, more polished sakes as well.
Oh, amazing. So I think that's the biggest thing, that's the biggest difference, I think, which is there in the States. So today what we want to talk more about, Michael, is how these sake producers, and can be from Japan or can be from any other place, who wants to come and make it big in US market. What do you think that, what are the best ways for them to enter in the US market, and what they should be more cautious about? What can be the proactive measures that they can take before making this decision of why not to come to US for a sake brand?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very booming time for sake in the US, right, for the last 10 to 15 years. I think that it's really key to get with the right distributor, when they come into the market, because it is very tough to figure out how you want to focus your sake, right? If you have the volume, then it's great for you to be trying to focus on both channels, both on and off premise.
Correct.
Sometimes for smaller brands, you might have some issues with inventory, and so you might want to be focusing more on a distributor or salespeople that can help drive you in izakaya or modern restaurants. Yeah.
Understood. Okay. Any sort of marketing strategies that you would like to give them in terms of educating your consumers? Because I think to distributors, you need to help in some or the other way in terms of placing your brand in the market. So any sort of tips that you would want to give to these brands to how predominantly they should be focusing on their marketing strategies? Yeah,
I mean, I think that, nowadays you do see a lot of kind of a mix, right, between modern labels and then traditional labels.
Correct.
And so, both can work. It really depends on what your target audience is, I mean, a very modern label can really appeal to people, maybe to wine drinkers, maybe to people that are kind of just making a segue into the sake market. Whereas you get a lot of people now that are sake aficionados that are very well versed in all of the lingo and all the words. So, some people even can read some of the kanji. So if you want to have a really traditional label, you just are probably going to be targeting a much more, sake aficionado crowd for sure.
Amazing. So this reminds me of the last event that we did in Chicago, and we had Toshio-san who did the masterclass for us on sake, and I saw that compared to the other masterclasses, which are mainly on the categories which are predominantly we see like Californian wines or the fine wines, I think the integrity level and the a sort of an excitement was there for the people who were attending the masterclass for sake. I think there were so many questions that they wanted to ask. They actually wanted to learn more about this category, and they see very limited and few people that they know that they can get these information on. So if we see this excitement in the group of people who are either the trade or the consumer, what are the trends that you are seeing? Like, what are the top, let's say, 2 or 3 trends that you would want to tell to sake producers? Like, this is what I'm seeing in the market right now when it comes to sake as a category.
Well, I mean, I think at this point, what is really exciting is that sake is enjoyed with much even outside of the Japanese sphere, right?
Amazing.
Like a lot of people are pairing sake with everything. That they realize that even though sake is a brewed beverage, it's brewed like beer, it's, you know, just like wine, there's so many different styles, so you can enjoy it with different foods. So you do see sake, we have sake on menus at Irish pubs to put with, you know, fish and chips. It's amazing with anything with umami factors, so pizza or, you know, tomatoes, cheeses. You see it a lot more at Burmese restaurants, like up here in the Bay Area, Indian restaurants, Thai restaurants, Chinese food. So you can find a lot of flavors that really go well with sake.
The sake brings a lot of flexibility when it comes to food pairing?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, you do have a lot of different styles, right? So you can have a drier karakuchi style, or you can have a style that's less polished that might go with more meats or hearty foods. But then again, a sake that maybe is amakuchi, that is perceived as sweet, it would go really well with spicier foods, and, you know, you kind of, it would bring down some of those.
The balance, the palate.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think that, I'm sure, but do you think that the restaurant has a clear idea to how easily they can incorporate sake in their menus, or do you still think that there is a gap in terms of people to understand that not to take it a category that goes with a specific food pairing, but it just can go with 90% of your menu?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of different applications you can have for sake. So one that you see a lot of these days would be for cocktails. You know, there has been a big push for some low ABV cocktails, right? So you can incorporate, for example, half the amount of gin or half the amount of tequila and add an ounce of sake, so you get a little bit more of a balanced flavor. Also, sometimes maybe you can have a few more drinks potentially, and, you know, it's a little bit more easygoing. Yeah, but we are incorporating sake a lot more into cocktail menus, and sometimes people will have like a small pour that they can do as a pairing option. For example, an Italian restaurant that has some nice crudos on the menu, they want to have 1 or 2 sakes by the glass that you could just highlight and pair for just that course.
True. I think I have seen that happening. So I think that's the easiest way that has been pulled out in the restaurant. Coming to one last question to you, Michael, what do you envision this sake industry in US for next 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're definitely seeing a lot more competition than we did before. So there are a lot of new sake brands out. So whether they're new, not new brands, but, you know, they're new to exporting, right? Japanese sake breweries that have just finally paired up with an importer, exporter. So, but there's also a lot of domestic sake now in the market. So you have some new sake breweries. Of course, there have been a few in the Bay Area, but there's a new sake brewery in Arkansas, you know, America's rice heartland. So you are seeing a lot of domestic local sakes these days. So it's important for anyone who is, you know, planning to import, that they are going to be facing a lot of competition, both with established brands and, you know, brands that are just bringing on new styles.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So before we close, Michael, just tell us about how is your experience with the US Spirits rating so far?
Oh, it's great. I've always enjoyed coming in here. I mean, this is, I think, the 6th one I've done for between the different judgings, and it's always a lot of fun. And you know, it's a good time to talk. But of course, I've been tasting a lot of spirits today, so, you know, I'm definitely feeling good.
I'm sure we wanted to grab you before the last 2 flights, but yes.
No, but it's great, and it's really great to see all the different brands that are coming in. I mean, it's really nice to see different categories, rums from all sorts of parts of South Asia and Southeast Asia. So it's really great, because nowadays you do see a lot of people interested to try things that are outside their comfort
I'm sure
zone.
the new regions and the smaller regions are popping up a lot, and people are actually going and taking all the interest to know more about these more specific regions, to what do they drink and the cultural assimilations that we are seeing, which is happening all across.
Yeah, I mean, it's really great. I mean, it's like Japanese gins. That's been kind of a thing that you see a lot more of recently, or you see a lot of different spirits from different corners of the globe that people, it's almost like a geography lesson for people, which is really good.
Oh, I'm sure,
So,
yes.
Yeah.